Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It being 6:30, Monday, June 29th, 2020, we will begin the meeting for the Committee of Ways and Means. All votes will be by roll call this evening. So councilors, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. If there are general questions from the general public, please reach out to the town council via our email, towncouncil@braintreema.gov, and we will get your questions answered for you. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councillor Barica.
Here.
Councillor Connors.
Here.
Councillor Flaherty.
Here.
Councillor Ryan.
Here.
Councillor Sasha.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And we'll move on to approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for May 5th, 2020?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Clerk Semino, roll call vote, please.
Councillor Barica.
Yes.
Councillor Connors.
Yes.
Councillor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councillor Ryan.
Yes.
Councillor Sasha.
Yes.
All in favor.
Thank you. We have no old business this evening, so we will move on to new business, which is 20042, Town Clerk. Proposal to create election voting centers or take up any action relative thereto. Clerk Casey is in attendance tonight. Would you like to begin, Clerk Casey?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On July 21st, I issued a report on the consolidation of polling locations for the 2020 fall elections. The report is a framework for elections operational policies during the time of a declared state of emergency that align with recent election legislation in expanding voter access and addresses health and safety concerns for both the voter as well as those who work the elections. The objective is to provide a fundamental right for voters. It summarizes what I've done is summarize the legislative changes that will have impact the 2020 fall elections, as well as the administrative impacts for the election official charged with the implementation of these changes. In addition, this plan provides two alternate proposals to the current structure for the consolidation of polling location. Over the years, I've been the town clerk for the last 6+ years, and many communities have begun to consolidate their individual polling locations. At that time, in my early days as a town clerk, it was generally done for economic impacts. The cost of elections have getting more expensive. There are a lot of new changes that the state legislature has put onto the election officials, and which they do not provide funding for, so it comes out of the community's budgets. And then with the recent increase of the minimum wage, it'll be going up to $15 an hour. We have to pay our election workers that minimum wage, and right now that is $12.75 per hour. So what I've done is taken that concern there with the financial impact, and also listen to some of the concerns of residents, not just in Braintree, but across the country, relative to the shootings of the school down in Connecticut several years back. Parents in the communities were asking that polling locations be taken out of the elementary school level. We have 5 or 6 polling locations at our elementary schools. And this has always weighed on my mind. And now we are here with something that no one ever thought would ever occur, that we would be quarantined to our homes and our lives would be changed to something that we couldn't fathom. We are starting to slowly move out of this area, but as we see those states that have gone before us and changed, now they have to go back to some of these restrictions for their communities, their states. And we do not know what the future will look like relative to the pandemic. So the state legislatures, the state election officials, and the cities and town clerks have been working in collaboration to put together plans that would best provide an election, an easier election for all. And what this plan I have presented is in that line of thought. Now, it's easy to make a plan. Our current structure is 12 polling locations. We're located in 11 buildings. Temporarily, we're in 10 buildings, but I know Councilor Stasha, we have to have a discussion if we continue to stay into the individual locations relative to your District 2A, which we relocated to the Hollis School for the now postponed debt exclusion election that was scheduled for last March 28th. But I have presented two alternate plans. One is a plan which I favor greatly, and it is with consolidating all polling locations at the Braintree High School using the Braintree foyer, as well as the gymnasium to house all of the different precincts. As an alternate plan to that, because ultimately you, the council, are the decision makers. Will make the final decision on what we do. That's not just in the charter, that is Mass General Law. And what my job here is to provide you with one or two plans to address our concerns here in Braintree, which I feel is best suited for us, but also give you folks an option plan, but also at the same time you can still continue to stick with what we have as the 11 buildings, 12 polling locations. The consolidation of polling location has been adopted by the new election legislation to make in-person voting more efficient and allowing for a more efficient process with fewer poll workers. Given the uncertainty of the future restrictions associated with the COVID-19 health emergency, and coupled with the continuation of concern among voters, as well as my election staff regarding the election process, and to minimize disinfecting or sanitizing multiple locations, I prepared both what I call a central voter plan, which is a CVC is the acronym, and that would be located at Braintree High School, or a district voting center, which would be consist of 3 voting sites. One would be at Braintree High School, one at East Middle School, and the final one would be at South Middle School. Each of those would house 4 polling locations. The high school would house districts 1 and 2. East would house districts 3 and 4, and district 5 and 6 will be housed at the South Middle School in that. Today, someone presented me with some social media information, and there was a comment relative to that this plan of voter consolidation was suppressing the election process, kind of indicating that voters don't have the opportunity to cast their votes. Let me review the options that the voters with the new legislation will have for the fall 2020 elections. There is early voting, there is absentee voting, and there is in-person voting. So there's 3 different options that a voter can take. But that is further subsetted down further. For early voting, starting July 15th, the Secretary of State's office will be mailing every registered voter in Massachusetts an application to obtain a early voting by mail ballot. They complete the application. There'll be an envelope in that application that is prepaid. And when you mail it, it comes directly to the Braintree Town Clerk's office. So there's no intermediary group getting involved in that. And at that time, when the ballots have become available, we will be sending out those ballots to the individual towns. Also for early voting, we have in-person early voting that is mandated under the new legislation. That will begin on Saturday, August 26th, and it will run through Friday, August 28th. For absentee voting, it's something, it's been in existence since voting has begun. They have added one of additional requirement that will make you eligible to become early voting is if you had concern about the COVID-19 issues, you can list that as one of the reasons to obtain an absentee ballot. And you can obtain an absentee ballot application right today. And that will be prepared, and when the ballots become available, that would be sent out to the voter. And also, there's absentee in-person voting. You as a voter can come to Braintree Town Hall when it's open and fill out an absentee ballot. And if the ballots are available at that time, you can just go into the auditorium where we will have a voting booth set up where you will be able to cast that ballot at that time. And finally, we have the traditional one day, a special day to vote, which for these September, it'll be September 1st. And for the general election, it'll be November 3rd. These are the options that are available to all the voters. In my opinion, it does not suppress anybody's opportunity to cast a ballot. There are many ways of doing that. It's only up to you, the voter, to go out there and cast that ballot. I can't drag you there. No one on this committee can tell you to vote. That's something that's in your own conscience that you have to do upon yourself. Whether you like a candidate or not, that's your choice as an official. The current polling locations, as we all know, it's in 11 precincts. I will not go over each of the precincts. It's been that way since the 47 years I've been here in the town of Braintree. The new changes, essentially, as I said, would be to incorporate all of the voting centers at Braintree Town Hall. Why do I ask for that? It's cost efficient. Right now, at individual polling locations, there are 12 police officers that need to be assigned to each of the polling locations. That's a double shift because the election lasts for 13 voting hours. But my election workers, they show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and they stay until 10 o'clock. So for them, it's a 16-hour day that there are people there working on your behalf to carry out these elections. There's also some economic savings on the way we interact with certain electronic changes that we have implemented in the election process by reducing some of the costs there. One of the big issues now under the COVID-19 is once we complete the election day, we're going to have to sanitize those buildings. So if I'm in 11 buildings, that's 11 buildings that have to be sanitized. I got some cost estimates on that, and based on the data I could find, it would cost me about $1,000 a building. So essentially, if I go to a central location, there's savings of $10,000. If I go into a district voting center, there's a savings of about $8,000. So again, there are some cost concerns, as well as keeping in mind these cost concerns. We're also thinking about the savings or the health issues that are associated with each of the different proposals. I'll review briefly the election process for the central voting center. The general parking will be the main parking area of the town hall. Not the town, at Braintree High School, I'm sorry. In addition, where we do have a lot of voters that have ADA issues. There will be 2 police officers staffed directing traffic at the circular driveway of the high school. At that point in time, if you had a handicap placard, you would be allowed into that area. There are, I believe, 21 handicap parking spaces within that area. However, we're going to increase the number of handicap parking spaces by adding signage to allow parking along the curbside of the building. If you do not have a handicap placard card, the police officer will be directing you to the main parking lot. It is anticipated that once a voter gets into the parking lot, they will complete the voting process and be back in their vehicles to exit the parking lot in about 15 minutes. You'll be entering the voting area through the gymnasium door. You'll be directed through signage to go to a check-in area. And with the recent change in the legislation, they're allowing us to use electronic polling books. Essentially, that is a database of all registered voters. And by using the first 3 letters of your last name and your house number, there's a 99% sure chance that you will be the only person coming up with that name. So when the person is checking you in, they'll be able to check you in at a much quicker pace. In addition, the way we're setting this up is that we'll have 12 check-in stations. Any voter can go to any station they want to, irregardless of where they currently vote. Because at that particular time, all you're going to be doing is getting yourself checked in as a voter, and then you'll be given a card that has a label that has all your voter information on it, and that'll match up to a voting station that you would go to get your ballot. Now, for the September 1st election, there are 8 different ballot styles. You know, most people go in, you just show up, you get your ballot, but for the town clerk's office, we have to manage those 8 ballots and ensure that you get the correct one. And this process with these electronic polling books will allow us to do that more efficiently. And when you get the ballot issued to you, there's a ivory soap chance that you're going to get the correct ballot. Okay, that sometimes there are some little flips and things happen. But you know, to me, the most important part of this new central voting part is not the efficiencies in checking the voter in, is that we will have a help center stationed right in the foyer. That help center will be staffed with 3 of the town clerk's office staff. We have to keep one person back at the office to deal with the state voter registration system so we can communicate back there. We also have 3 members of the voter registers present at all times at that polling location. Everybody's have heard on times that they've come to vote and they were listed as an inactive voter, and many times they're at the wrong precinct. So we have to find out where they have to go. Then they have to get into their car and drive to another one. And it's an inconvenience. It causes voter frustration. The poor election worker is no cause on themselves that they had to deal with that issue. It's just the way you became an inactive. Most times you became an inactive voter because you did not return your annual census form that was mailed out in January. On June 1st this year, if you did not send that in, you automatically became an inactive voter. So when you show up on September 1st, or if you showed up on election early voting days, or you obtain an absentee ballot, you will have to fill out an affidavit to show that you still live in town, and then we'll be able to correct that. But now with the central voting site, we will have all of that help to help you. And if you happen to be in the wrong voting precinct, you just have to walk over maybe 10 feet, 15 feet to get into the correct one instead of crossing town. So there's some efficiencies there for the voter. It reduces voter frustration, and it makes the experience of voting more pleasurable. During the voting process, we have incorporated a lot of social distancing policies. When you come into the voting precinct or into the gym foyer, we will be having round discs on the floor, which is your signal. That'll say if you should be at the last empty disc before you see another person. And there'll be signage directing you through this whole process as you move along through this whole procedure. It'll be very efficient. What we've done is we colorize some of the districts. So when you go to your ballot station, the card that will be given you, if you were given a red card, you will match up to a red voting station, which would contain your district. And that would be in District 1 and 2. If you were in District 5 and 6, that would be a blue card. I kind of made it patriotic, red, white, and blue, so we stay with the theme of patriotic duties. And it should help you. It kind of gives you a cue on what you should do as you go to the next steps, and it should be very efficient. All of the ballot stations, after the voters, when they come in, they'll be getting their ballot. They will get a sanitized pen. They will get their ballot. They'll go to the ballot station, which was sanitized. Once they complete their voting, they will take their pen and their ballot. They'll go out to the checkout area where they'll deposit their now non-sanitary pen, and they will then place their ballot into the tabulator. Throughout the day, these pens will be re-sanitized, and then they will be brought back to put back into use. So this is a process that we have taken to ensure the safety of both the voter as well as my workers. Additionally, you'll see the voters, they'll all be having a mask, and they will also have a shield, a desk shield, and place in front of them to ensure that both their safety and your safety are taken into account. Now, under Massachusetts general laws, we cannot mandate a voter to wear a face mask. We will ask you, if you come in without one, we will offer you one. If you refuse to have one, we will have an area set up where you will cast your ballot and then deposit it away from the general public who are wearing the face mask. It's to ensure the safety of all individuals involved in the voting process. This is basically a slimmed down version or explanation of the plan. If I move to the district plan, it's very similar, but it's just based on two districts in one building. So instead of having the biggest difference is instead of having the pre-check-in area, you will just go to your typical check-in desk. We will have the electronic pad where we'll check you in, and another person will give you a ballot, the correct ballot, and then you move through the same process of going to the ballot box, get a sanitized pen, and finish the process by placing the used pen into a box to be sanitized and cast your ballot into the process. One of the benefits of having centralized, whether it's a centralized or a district voting center, election equipment is kind of funny. Each election, it is validated by my office in the Board of Registers. We go through a protocol, and it's an open to the public. We post the meetings, which nobody attends, and we upload the programs into the ballot. We test over 100 ballots into the machine to ensure they're proper. We zero out the totals, and then we have these machines, auto mark machines, and they are to assist people with visual issues, that they can fill out their ballot using this device. It's a magnifying device that will make the printing of the ballot any size they so choose. And at the end of the day, all this machine does is fill out the round circle on your ballot, and then allows the person to deposit that ballot in the tabulator like any other voter. But these machines are old. They're over 15 years old, though they're checked each election. They work when they're shipped out the door. We have one for each precinct. And every election since I've been the town clerk, one of them fails for some reason or another. And we try our best to make it work. When it does fail, I personally go out. I typically, about 70% of the time I can resolve the issue. But for those times I can't, it takes 3 hours before we can get a repairman to come in and actually that delays, is an inconvenience for that voter who wants to use it. In the central or the district voting centers, we will have backup for each of those areas. We'll have four machines in the district ones, and we'll have all 12 at the central one. So if one of them goes down, we have an immediate backup to it. So we will, again, eliminate an inconvenience to voters, especially voters who have a special need to utilize that machine. We want to make sure we accommodate them as best as we can. There are many administrative benefits to all of this from myself and my town and my staff and the Board of Registers. We're centralized. We can easily process a lot of the ballots and within the voting centers. When we're dealing with absentee ballots, actually when we're dealing with the early voting ballots, the ones that you would come in person to vote for, I typically would have a central tabulating facility, which I operate on the second floor of Town Hall on election day. There will be no need for that. That's an additional 8 workers that I have to pay to run that. Those then could be done at the central facility or at the district facility, at each individual precinct level. We're talking too many ballots to really efficiently to do with it when we have to move to 12 or 11 different buildings. So I deal in efficiencies. I try to do what's most effective for the town, which, to my opinion, what is most financially sound, and again, also deliver the election results in a timely manner. One big change that I foresee in administrative capacity, there are several towns who had elections this late May and early June. Absentee ballots typically for their town elections during that time frame ran 200, maybe 300 absentee ballots for the year. But because of the COVID pandemic, that has jumped to thousands of ballots. Those thousands of ballots are sealed in an envelope. Those thousands of ballots have to be opened and then unfolded and then be placed into the ballot box. These are some of the obstacles that myself as the election official have to deal with, but with consolidating of locations, it allows me to efficiently take care of these known issues. I do expect to see that type of thing to be happening. When we talk about a pandemic and health concerns, one we naturally say, oh, we should be reducing things so we don't get closer together. Well, I just went over earlier that you have 5 options to how to vote. I expect the early voting to be significantly higher. Actually, the in-person early voting for the primary election has never been done before. We have had 3 early votings for the general elections, but never for the state primary election. I expect early voting ballots and absentee ballot to outpace the in-person ballot. So we're going to have a reduced number of people actually coming into the polls. Again, looking at cost efficiency, when I have a reduction in people coming in and I contaminate a site, it's best to try to maximize one location and deal with the sanitation issues in one location. In addition, it allows me as the chief election officer to ensure that the safety protocols are carried out. In 11 locations, I cannot do that. For me to get around town, thinking there are 13 hours in an election day, I got 11 polling locations, with the driving in between to polling locations, I cannot spend really sufficient time at each polling location to deal with those issues. I guarantee you an issue is going to happen it happens every election. We cannot control everything. The machinery goes down, but we have the staff that are well versed in how to correct these situations. We try to do much as we can over the phone, but I visit every location, and every polling location, something pops up. And again, being a central location, we can address them immediately on eliminating any voter frustration. Basically, this is the summary of it. Any questions, throw them my way. I'll try to address them the best I can, and if I can't, I will definitely get back to you and let you know.
Thank you so much, Clerk Casey, for that thorough explanation that I know was very helpful for me. Just before we get to questions, Sue, I want to make sure we're 100% clear on what we're going to be making a recommendation on. So there's two, I believe, Clerk Casey, there's two options, the central voting, or no, three options: keep as is, central voting, or district voting centers. So the outcome of the vote, Sue, is to make a formal recommendation on one of those to the full council. Is that correct?
That would be my recommendation. And again, I just want to make it, what that is the true overview of it. But I want to make it clear. It could be interpreted the way it has been written, that it might give an indication that it's permanent. Okay. If you want to make it permanent, that's fine with me. If you want to make it temporary through the end of the 2020 election season, and when I say the end of the season, it's going to be December 31st, because we have had elections in December because of some changes that, let's say, a congressional seat, we had to call a special election. So I want to keep in place anything to have this, if we're going to do it temporary through December 31st, 2020. Okay? And then what we can do is take a look at it next year and take a look at the data that comes, the facts that we get. How successful was it? Did it cause any impacts to any of the voters? What were the benefits? What were the downfalls? Could we tweak it a little and make it better? Or maybe abandon ship and go with the old policy of the 11 precincts? Or maybe the two district ones work better, and we go with that. But these are options I want to try to give to you. It's my experience in running elections and what I see and how we can overcome the obstacles that are before me right now. I would like to see it permanent, but I am more than happy to let's do it a trial run it up the flagpole, and I feel it will be successful. And you know, people will be quite pleased with the outcome of it, and then we can discuss it once again.
Thank you. Councilor Flaherty.
Hi there. So I appreciate your explanation. It was very helpful to me. And what it struck me that we should think about is since we're considering a pretty big change to our polling places, maybe it would be instructive to consider the recent change that was made on a smaller scale when District 1A moved from the Marge Crispin Center to the to Town Hall. We had that change made, and I believe that District 1A voted at Town Hall for the presidential primary. And I know that every election is critical, but we're coming up on a presidential election where we always have more voter turnout. And so I'm just wondering if there's any data that you have on how voter turnout from 1A at Town Hall reflected the change, if at all. Was it impacted? Were we able to pivot in this way effectively?
The response I got back from District 1A voters on the presidential election, that they enjoyed the change. They felt that the Crispin Center location was very difficult for them to get up the back stairs. From an ADA point of view, it wasn't the easiest path to get to the voting center. You had to come in through the front door, to go up a ramp. You had to cut through a hallway and then to the auditorium there, and finally to get to the voting booth. One of the election requirements is to try to, at all possibilities, is to have all voters enter the same door. It's only when the building that you have does not allow that, you have to have the option to use that. At one time at the Flaherty School, they used to have people coming in the side door to vote. Under the state election law department, they had us close that door because they wanted everybody to come in the main door. That when you have that opportunity that a handicapped person could go through the main door, then the normal voter could enter the main door to vote too and not have a special entryway for any particular group.
Okay, I appreciate that there would be an appreciation for those structural differences that Town Hall offers over and above the Martin Center. But my question really is about voter turnout. Did a similar number of people who would ordinarily vote in an election from 1A show up to Town Hall?
Well, that's going to be a little difficult to analyze because you take a look at the overall voting. The overall voting for this presidential primary election was down versus what it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was let's say, a different makeup of the candidates, and there was a lot more energy within the campaign back in 2016 that drove a lot more voters out. But District 1A, their voting levels were at or above what we've seen in other elections. They weren't the lowest of any of the precincts, and they kind of fell in line with their traditional pecking order of turnout has normally been.
Okay, so your assessment of that change is that it was basically effective?
It was effective. There was no difference, in my opinion, that the percentage, though it was lower than the 2016 presidential primary, but so wasn't everybody else. But in their turnouts, they were similar to what they have had in the order of precincts. Typically, the two Highland precincts are the highest turnout, and they achieved that. And then we have the lowest turnout tends to be District 4B, that came to be lowest precinct. So the pattern within the precinct, the ranking between the precincts was pretty identical.
Okay. All right, that tells me, that's helpful. Thank you.
But one point I want to make out though is we want about how do people know about the change? How were they impacted about knowing where to go? And as you saw at District 1A, we had the two signs at both entry points of 1A notifying the people that their voting location had changed to Town Hall. At Town Hall, we had another sign that welcomed District 1A voters to Town Hall as a new precinct. In addition, they were notified by mail that their voting policy has changed. And then we used the media, the Patriot Ledger. Fred Hansen was very kind to put a couple of articles in stating the fact that that polling location had changed. And it seemed to be very impactful because I don't recall any one voter coming upset that they tried to vote in the Crispin Center and they were upset they had to come all the way to Town Hall, which is only less than a mile, but that they came over and they had a pleasant voting experience. They had no waits. It was easier for them to get in the building, and it met my expectations of that change would have made.
Okay, and so would you make the same effort to try and to educate the public? I mean, would the strategy to let Braintree know that this was happening be the same?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, it's quite how kind you are to me with some funding I would need, but there are other ways to reach out to it. I would again use the free media. I'm sure Fred Hansen would be, again, kind to put some notices in the newspaper. I am mandated by election law to notify every registered voter. Not every registered voter, every household that has a registered voter. So there's a lot of cost savings by doing that. And then I would again put banners up at the existing polling locations, and these are going to be up at least 30 days in advance of the election. So people, they may not go by it on one day, but they'll see it and they'll have plenty of time to read that sign. And lastly, something I utilized back in 2016 when we came out with early voting, I placed an ad in the Braintree Advertiser. I purchased the front page and I notified everybody about early voting and the hours and days that we were going to have early voting. We had 7,000 people show up for early voting. It was the first time that we did that. So people saw it, they heard about it, and they reacted to it, and they did vote.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Shasha?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Clerk Casey. You mentioned the social media post out there, and I apologize for starting that whole thing. I was taken aback by how overwhelmingly negative the comments were coming back on this. I understand the logic and the financial impact and why we might want to do this, but people are having a really visceral negative reaction to this concept. And I think reading through everything, and honestly, I haven't talked to anybody about this yet. This is the first I'm kind of hearing about it, but I think it boils down to two things. First is, for all the reasons that we might want to consolidate the polling location for health reasons, people are looking at that and saying, I do not want to go into a public building where the whole town is being sent on the same day, and they have real health concerns there. The other thing is that just from a logistical standpoint, in terms of voter turnout, there are people who are elderly and currently walk to their polling station. I know there are organizations that will give people rides to the polls, but then there's the whole thing of getting in a car with somebody you don't know during a time of pandemic. I think people's concerns they're not being reactionary. They're pretty legitimate concerns. And I think if we were going to do something like this, it would be incumbent on us to address those concerns up front. And I mean, if we have reason to believe that the high school is only going to have as much voter turnout as, say, one polling location, because everybody is going to be doing the remote voting, I know I will, right? And if lots of people do that, those issues might not really be concerns, but at the moment, this is based on a lot of unknowns. And I think that I would not be comfortable moving ahead with something like this until we can get some of the residents to actually support it. And just based on the very brief amount that I'm seeing, that is not what I'm seeing right now.
Madam Chairman, may I respond?
Of course, go right ahead, Clerk Casey.
Councilor Sasha, on the health concerns, as I reviewed, there are 5 ways for a person to vote. I do anticipate people will be utilizing non-in-person voting. I expect the early in-person voting levels to be low. I expect election day in voting to be low, with people taking or casting their ballots by mail, whether it's absentee or by early voting by mail ballots. And based on the history I got from other communities, that is going to be the case. Now, walking to voting, there are many people who do walk to voting. And I'm going to give you an example of which is a concern to those voters who live across from the South Middle School. They see South Middle School every single day when they walk out their front door. They can't vote there. They have to go to the Highlands. I used to live 300 yards from my voting that I vote right now, but I got to redistrict and I had to go a mile away. There are changes that occur every day in people's lives, and we adapt to those. And people adapt to them very easily. And it's the same way when I moved the East Middle School District down to the Outdoor Affairs Building because of the construction that was going to go on there. The people in East, who voted at East Middle School adapted well. They got down there again through the signage and the advertising and the mailing. They were fully aware of it. Again, when they got in there, they had a very favorable experience. They liked it. They're not even sure they want to go back. But when they go back to East Middle School, I don't know if, I'm sure you all see the school. And it's fantastic. I was up there recently scoping this thing out, and I was very impressed with the way the school looked and how easy now voting would occur at that particular piece.
Hey, what's going on?
In that post that was, I don't know, neighborhood, whatever they call it. I'm not on social media, so I don't know half the names of them, but someone dropped this on my desk today. And there was one post that concerned me a great deal. One, they said that the seniors shouldn't be election workers. We should replace our seniors because they have concerns about their health and whether they want to work or not. The vote, many of the seniors, they'll be getting to me very shortly whether they want to work or not, and we will adapt. Because if I don't have enough voters, I cannot run 11 voting precincts. I have to consolidate. There's no other option for me. Then in that same post, that individual stated the fact that, well, the teachers aren't going to be working that day, so we should have the teachers become election workers. We can, under mass election laws, I can't tell anybody to be an election worker. You have to sign up to do that. But you know, the one thing that was absent in that little post was that person who posted that did not say, I'm going to sign up to be an election worker. Okay? If they did that, I would give credence to what they said. But by that absence of those words, it tells me it's a person who just gets on social media and they don't understand the whole process. Election day for most people is a 5-minute experience. They get to their polling location, they check in, they get their ballot, cast their ballot, deposit it into the ballot box and back in their cars. They head out and back home to where they want to go. For those who administer elections, it's a 6-month process. Every year we have changes. Every year I'm replacing election workers. Since March 3rd to today, I lost 4 election workers because they passed away. But my election workers are seniors. They're seasoned, I call them seasoned workers. I'm a senior. And I think I'm fully functional. For someone to think that a senior is not capable of doing that, shouldn't be saying that if they don't want to step up to the plate. If they want to step up to the plate, please give me a call, because I would love to sign them up. Because when I get a person who's 65 or younger, I get a kid who's working the elections. That's how dire I'm in need of work is, but I'm looking for workers that can help me out, because I know I'm losing workers every year, and it's getting more difficult to get workers. And I've gone to the schools and tried to hire, get the young kids to become poll workers. I was successful at getting a few, and I went out there and said, hey, look, if you got a prom coming up, you can make yourself a couple of $100, be great for the prom. And they still didn't show up. You know, they didn't volunteer. So we deal with the people who really are engaged in the election, tend to be the seniors. They're out there, they're dependable. And, you know, that post kind of went up my backside when they didn't volunteer. And I understand that people aren't gonna like it. There's a lot of things I don't like in life, but I accept them because they benefit the whole versus a little part. And that's what I'm trying to get against. These proposals, the biggest proposal is to me is the best, But hey, I'll compromise down to the district one because I know that's much more efficient than being at 12, 11 different locations because that's inefficient. And if I have one precinct that I lose three election workers, what do? Nobody's going to sign up. I don't have the person to fill it in. So I'm going to lead to voter frustration when that person, now I created a line. And this is to avoid all of that, to try to give everybody an equal, pleasant voting experience. It's not to accommodate one group or another, it's to accommodate the whole and make it the best we possibly can do.
Counselor Sciascia, did you have another question?
Yes, just one follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Casey. I'm not going to comment on specific posters. We all know social media, but I do just, like, I hear what you're saying, but I can't tell from the 10 polling locations to the 3 polling locations, or maybe if there was an opportunity to do 6, 1 for each district versus the 1 central, how much of that is being driven by costs? I know you said the costs per worker are increasing times, 10 locations. That obviously is a factor. I mean, if you say you cannot man 10 locations this year, then that's the answer. We're doing some consolidation, but
No. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Steve. Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Sciascia.
I was just going to say, I can't, from what you've written here and what you're describing, I can't tell how much of this is being driven by, it's going to put the whole voting process at risk of being understaffed if we keep too many locations versus this is just more efficient and we want to do it this way. Does that make sense?
Not really. It's not being driven by not getting enough workers. I always manage to have enough workers to start the election day, okay? But again, I'm dealing with seasoned workers, okay? And seasoned workers have health issues. And I know each election morning at 5:30 in the morning, I am going to get a call from 2 or 3 or 4 of them that they are unable to attend or fulfill what they've signed up for because of a health reason. And I expect it. And I try to have backup workers at all times. But like when you have any type of backup plan, things don't work completely the way they should. In that the backup person I thought I would have, they don't answer the phone at 5:30 in the morning, or they don't answer the phone or unavailable because something else came up.
Counselor Sciascia, are you set for now?
Yes, I'm set. Thank you.
Counselor Connors.
Hi, so I have some questions. So on the, Clerk Casey, on the staffing requirements that you gave in the handout, and there's no page numbers, so I don't know which page number it's on, but it's the little spreadsheet you put up there.
Yes.
It has police officers for the current voting is 13, but when you flip the back, it says you need 21, 3 in the morning to transport, which equals 24. The numbers, I can't get the numbers to work. I'm just wondering what the differential is on, it looks like we need 26 police officers for current voting. But on the spreadsheet in the back, it looks like we only need 24. So I'm just curious the details of that.
The 3 police officers that it indicates that show up at 5:30 in the morning, they then go, what, pardon me?
Oh, sorry, they transport.
Yeah, those transport. Their last building they transport to is their polling location. They stay for their shift. So they do a couple of, like an hour or so earlier on their shift. Under Massachusetts general law, a police officer needs to deliver the ballots. So what I do is I use 3 police officers. 2 of them transport 4 precincts, and one does 3 precincts. Their last site they visit is where they're going to spend the full shift. So they believe they work until, let's say, 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it's replaced with the second shift. So it's the officers I need, the 13th officer on the current voting, 12 are for the precincts, and the 13th one, at times will drive me or one of my staff members or aboard a register to deliver ballots to other locations. And that person works 1 shift.
Okay, so it's 12.
So it's 12 full shifts, and then there's here for the police officer who transport.
And then as far as workers, the only difference really is the increase in sanitizing clerks. We need 12 versus 6 for the other ones. But other than that, the numbers stay the same. So the personnel changes would really be mainly the police officer cost and the 6 additional sanitizing clerks. Right? I see from the spreadsheet?
Staffing, for staffing, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Early voting you answered. Sorry, I had a list of questions and some of the stuff got answered. So if you centralize it or you break it down into the 3 versus what we have now, are the schools still closed during that day that we vote, or are they open?
Schools will be closed on election day.
So it doesn't matter what we do, they're still closed on that day.
That's correct.
And then, so we talked about cost savings. Do you have an estimate, so is it for cost savings, a generalized cost savings for doing it at the high school versus doing it at the 3 districts? What the cost savings is between the...
If we're going to look at the total cost savings, again, I kind of did a background envelope estimate. I know on the...
A ROM, we call it a ROM.
Okay, on the police officers, a shift costs me about, well, it doesn't cost me because it comes out of the police department budget, is about $1,000. Okay, the reduction in sanitizing clerks, that would save about $1,200. The sanitizing of the polling locations after the election will be running between $8,000 and $9,000, $8,000 or $9,000. Now, one thing I want to point out, that's per election.
Right.
Very important that we understand that's a per election cost. So just for the September and November election, we're looking at well over $25,000 saving.
So we have budgeted right now for the police and maybe not the sanitizer shift. Can any of those additional costs that we're seeing right now be covered under the COVID costs?
That's what I'm looking into. I just got an email this evening from the Secretary of State's office, Michelle Tassinari. She's the Director of Elections, and she indicated that the state has ordered some PPE materials from a company, and that all of these will be delivered to the different communities beginning in August. Doesn't say what's in them at this point in time. I'm expecting it'll be face masks. I don't know if it'll include a shield or will it include a face shield. I did a little survey as I seem to be around town quite a bit. And I bump into my election workers on a regular basis. So I've been asking them, do they prefer a face shield or a desk shield? And so far I haven't found anyone who wants a face shield. They're sitting there for 13 hours. And I don't know about you, I can't have a mask on my face for more than 5 seconds before I can't breathe and my face gets warm. And then with the face shield on, that's going to add additional heat. And by sitting there for 13 hours, I think that's cruel and abusive punishment for anybody to be wearing. So I'm looking for the desk shield that will provide more than adequate safety. Will be above the height that would be needed to ensure that there's no droplets being transferred from one party or the other. And the ballots, it will have a little window at the bottom so the ballots can be passed out to the voter without anybody touching one another.
So we would be, so for this year, we would be short because when we did the budgets, we would be short the cost for the sanitizing and the cost for the additional sanitizing clerks per se. And that could potentially come out of the COVID care
That,
grants that we've been getting.
I believe that would be coming right out of that.
Okay. So we won't have a shortfall of budget this year if we go ahead and go with the full voting.
Not if I can help it. I squeeze every penny out of every dollar that I can. And, you know, I treat my budget like it's my own and for a sale.
My next question is on, you talked about having spares for failures. Do we have any on hand currently? If one of them does fail in a location, do we have any spare backups when we do the full voting in the areas?
Election workers?
No, sorry, not the machines, the actual ballot machines.
Okay, I have 12 ballot machines, one for each precinct, and we have one spare.
So that spare is always ready to go and it can be driven to a site if we,
The spare is validated just like every other machine on election day. And it'll be, the machines are programmed, so when we move it into place, we can assign it to whatever precinct we want.
and this really has zero bearing. Let me just put it, this has zero bearing, but I am going to bring it up. Every school, the PTO, one of their main fundraisers is a bake sale. So what happens when you move, I know you're all smiling and laughing at me now, but it is a big part of their budgets and their fundraisers. So what happens to that? Does that all go away?
Well, I've already been approached by people about their bake sales. And if we go into a central one, you know, they can all set up right along the corridor as they're walking into, if it was a central voting center, they could set up along the walkway as they're entering into the building or leaving the building and to sell their wares there. If they're in a school, like we go to the district ones, we could look at assigning certain ones, one of the three buildings. But then again, if the Board of Health tells me that we can't have bake sales because of
COVID.
contamination issues, we're not gonna have them. So.
Right. Eventually, hopefully we can, you know, as things start opening back up or whatever, they can go back to them. It may not be this year, but, you know, it's one of the long-term, again, it has zero bearing on what we're talking. It has a little bit of bearing to the PTO. It has big bearing on the PTO. So it's obviously, it was a question that I was asked.
Yeah, it does have a bearing on it because I myself. too. And,
I always, yeah.
And I told them that we have to look at certain things before we can do that. We have to have the health issues and we'll try to accommodate everybody. I know it's a big moneymaker for them.
It is. You know, being the ex-PTO president for Morrison, yeah, I can validate that. It was a good portion of our sales every year. So I just a couple comments for me. I have concerns about transportation for local older residents getting to a centralized location, as well as I think other people had. In my opinion, I would be willing to try maybe a district level to see how it goes, temporary, but going to one centralized location, I think we should, if we're going to do this, if we think it's going to work, we take baby steps in that, maybe try the 3 versus the 12, because when I go to, I don't know about you guys, but when I go to my district, there is never anybody there. There's never any cars. And I go at varying times, so there's never a line. And I think we can use some consolidation. I'm not sure how far we want to go with that consolidation, but whether it's going to just one location for 3, one location for 4, one location for 5. or trying the 3 that was given to see how it works, but I don't think I'm ready to go to a full one centralized location. So just my thoughts, and thank you for answering all my questions.
Thank you.
Counselor Ryan, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with Donna, practically everything she just said. I think that going from, I don't even think we're taking baby steps. I think we're taking big steps, going from 12 voting locations down to 3. I think that's gonna move in the direction that the town clerk is saying. I think doing it on a temporary basis is appropriate. I have the same concerns about people being able to get there, might be a little further from the house. I was a little concerned about people waiting in line. I don't think, I just don't know if we have the big turnout for the presidential election. I think that's what I'm concerned with. So maybe we're not going to see that on the primary, but I'm concerned with seeing that on the in the November election. So I think I agree. Like I said, going to 3 is a compromise. It's a big change. I think it's something we can justify, and I think it's we're going through COVID-19. I think all the ways people can vote that the town clerk has identified is all appropriate, and I think a lot of people are going to vote from home, and they're going to mail in their ballot, and they're not going to have to even walk into a polling location, and that's going to be a lot more work for you, Jim, and for your staff as well. But I think that's reasonable. I can understand Councilor Shasha's comments about social media, but I think we got to vote on it. I think we got to make a decision. That's what we're here for, to make decisions. And I'm ready to take that vote tonight and move forward and let the town clerk make a presentation to the full council, and then and hopefully we can get some more discussion going too. But I think this is the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ryan. Does any other counselor have questions? Counselor Flaherty.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that I think that our town clerk Casey has made a really strong argument for consolidation, and that those efficiencies translate to cost savings, and it would be irresponsible for us to ignore that, because that money is real, and we know what we're facing. We just went through the budget, and I think that even though a lot of Braintree residents have been voting in their home precincts for a long time, and they don't want to necessarily see the change, I also think that they expect us to keep a tight lid on costs. And it's important to remember not to let social media always drive the conversation, because social media almost never has the whole story. We are the ones who have read this lengthy packet that Clerk Casey provided for us, and it gives a lot of strong reasoning. Plus, right now with this pandemic in place, the efficiencies make it easier to keep poll workers safer, and voters safer too. And so to me, consolidation makes a huge amount of sense. And then it becomes a question of, well, how much consolidation makes sense? And to me, consolidation the whole way, especially if you're talking temporarily, like if you're saying this is just for 2020, and then in 2021, we're going to review this and decide how that went. How successful was that central location idea? And do we want to continue with that, or don't we? If you put it in the context of this is a temporary thing and it's done to save money partly, but also because right now it's really important to keep our poll workers, who fall squarely in the category of people most at risk of COVID, keeps them safer. And they're the only ones who want to do this job. I think Clerk Casey has done everything that he can do to invite more people to be a part of that process. And they're the ones who show up, and they're the ones that he relies on. And they rely on our community to keep them safe, or to do what we can to help keep them safe, to help them make this contribution without having to necessarily feel that they're risking their lives to do so. So then, but then it's like, well, how far can you push this town? How far can we expect people to go in one leap? To go from 12 to 1, that's really big. So given that, I think I can be convinced to move to 3 locations, because that is also a big consolidation. So I thought I would share my line of reasoning, because I think sometimes it helps to it just helps to know what people are thinking before we make a vote, before we make a recommendation that the full council is counting on us to do. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Shasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just one last question. Clerk Casey, what is the timing about? When do you need an absolute vote by the full council in order to make everything happen?
By the next meeting, because I have to
Okay.
know everybody. It's if there is no vote on, I think the meeting's what now, the 15th, Clerk Semino?
Yep.
Okay, so if I do not have a vote, we're gonna be going with individual precincts. I cannot wait another day because the train has left the station. I have to make sure that all the conductors are on the train to take the tickets, and that's the last day that I can do it, because we're up against the wall. Like I said, July 15th, the Secretary of State's gonna be mailing out an application to every registered voter in the state for early voting by mail. I expect to see a ton of them to come in. And I'm calling on my staff to work now a full day now, starting this Monday, for election administrative processes. We have to get things moving, and once we start down a path, we better stay with that path. So at least the fall elections are over. But you know, my job here as the election official for the town is to advise you. Okay, and that's what this report was intended to do. It tells you that these are the current situation. There are 2 options that I feel, based on my experience and my interaction with voters and all of these government officials, reading the state legislation and talking to my fellow town clerks, that these are things that have been successful with them. Not all of them do the full consolidation. Some do partial consolidations. But the trend is to begin a consolidation process. Like at the beginning, I said I could live with a district one. I said it's not to me, it's not as advantageous for administrative policy, but it's a lot better than what we have right now. The current one is destined for failure, and I cannot, in good conscience, not move forward that it would be failure, because I see the struggle I will have to staff the elections, and having flexibility to move a couple of workers from precinct, let's say 1A over to 2B, can be helpful when I see a peak in voters from them. Because again, with this electronic voter check-in, I'll be instantaneously, real time, seeing what voters are coming in from what precinct, so I can manage that. And then eventually, over time, I'm going to be building trends that I will know on an hourly basis for history, or someone after me, to come after me, will know that these are the peak hours. So I knew I have to do my staffing levels a little bit higher, because this is what real time is showing me. This is something I did for the early voting, and I know what those hours are, so it's very helpful.
Councillor Ryan.
I'm going to make a motion that we propose to the full council the election voter center plan that is having the 3 voting locations of East Middle School, the South Middle School, and Braintree High School.
So thank you, Councillor Ryan. I have a couple of questions just to make sure we're 100% clear for residents. If you can just bear with me for a few.
Someone can second the motion and you can discuss it under discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
I'll second it.
Sue, do I just,
Yes, you can go ahead and.
okay, thanks, Counselor Ryan. Thanks, Sue. Just a couple points of clarification, Clerk Casey. The early voting for the state primary begins on August 22nd.
If
Was it,
if
Or
that's a
26.
Saturday, let me see. If that's a Saturday, it will be. Let me see. Hang on, let me check my notes here. It begins Saturday, August 22nd.
so the polls that day will be open on a Saturday?
That's correct.
Okay, so I did have the opportunity to speak to two of my constituents about this who had concerns, and their primary concern, both of them, was wait times. So understanding there's 6 full days of early voting in person is definitely helpful in reducing wait times at the day of.
Madam Chairman, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes,
I want to make sure for early voting will not be in the district voting centers.
right.
All early voting will be done at town hall like it always has been. I just want to make that
Yep.
distinction.
Thank you. And then as I was reading through the materials, it looks like there would be 48 voting booths at the central voting center. Is that, and 48 booths at each of the district voting centers? Did I
Uh,
get that? Because then you've got triple the number essentially, I think, if I did the math right.
Each precinct has 3 4-station voting booths. Okay, so that would give you
Yep,
4 times 3, 12 times 4. Yeah, each will have 4 areas where you can cast your ballot.
okay.
So each of the 12, each of the 3 districts.
And then final question, and you may not have this, you estimated car door to car door 15 minutes for the central voting location that it would take, the average time it would take a voter to get in and out. Do you expect that to be the same for the district voting centers?
That would be the same for all of them, because all of them have their, like East Middle School, the primary voting parking area is right in front of the gym. Okay, they're gonna be entering that new entrance, and they're gonna be exiting the side door, and they have to walk down a pathway. If it's crowded, they will have to use the lower level, so they would have a longer walk, 15 minutes from the time they get out of their cars to get through the
Okay.
process in the cars is a reasonable estimate.
Okay. And then I think my last question, the absentee in person, you said, so absentee voting residents can come to the town hall or write and request an absentee ballot and mail it in, correct?
They can mail it in, or they can come to town hall and vote in person. But that will not be available until the ballots are delivered.
But it would be
They- they-
before
they
August
delivered-
22nd?
Definitely before August 22nd.
Okay. Okay, so that would be, you could come to town hall before early voting even started and get your ballot
That's correct.
and vote, as long as your office is open.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yeah, I think that feels like a sufficient number of ways to access. I think, the first considerations are the fundamental right of residents and citizens to vote, and the health of our residents and the health of our poll workers. And it feels to me like going to the 3 centers satisfies those fundamental responsibilities we have to all involved, and alleviates cost burdens and alleviates administrative burdens for your office as well, Clerk Casey.
I'm sure they will.
So thank you. I don't have any other questions, and I know a motion has been made.
And a second.
Okay, so just to be,
Motion by Counselor Ryan, second by Counselor Connors. And now it's time for roll call vote.
Counselor Flaherty, did you have a question?
Sorry.
Is the motion that's made, is that for this to be a temporary suggestion, or is it for this to be a permanent suggestion?
Temporary.
The motion was for temporary. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor Flaherty. Thank you, Counselor Ryan. So the district voting temporary for 20 through 12/31/2020. Okay. Okay, so I think we can do a roll call vote now, Clerk Semino?
Counselor Baraka,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Aye.
Counselor Flaherty,
Yes.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Counselor Sasha.
No.
That's 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Clerk Semino?
Counselor Baraka,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Aye.
Counselor Flaherty,
Yes.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Counselor Sasha,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks,
Good
Mr.
night.
King.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for, thank you for
Bye,
your
everybody.
consideration. Bye-bye.
Good night.